Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of FullFunnel Live. This time, joining from Valencia, my name Vlad, and Andrei will be joining any second now. As always curious to hear where our community is joining us from live. And while your guys are typing and sharing, just wanted to give a quick intro today. We wanted to do a review of 2024, what we have learned, kind of the state of full funnel go-to-market strategy. And instead of doing superficial research and looking at some survey submissions and surveying a bunch of people, we wanted to really dive deeper into all the conversations that we had this year, or let's say the major conversations that we had this year, because every week we'll be having anywhere between 5 to 10 either discovery calls or client calls. We'll be working on clients, implementing and testing solutions. So this is kind of fresh out of the press, very recent insights this year. What are the challenges that we have observed? What are the kind of trends and shifts that we are observing? How is B2B marketing evolving? These are the things that we want to share today. So kind of behind the scenes, and also sharing some of the solutions that we tested to those challenges. So with that out of the way, let's dive in and revisit them one by one. The first one that we have observed is kind of a big shift from what you might call acquisition at all costs. And I think this shift is not new. It's been happening from 2023 for sure, where we have seen that it became increasingly difficult to acquire customers, that outbound has kind of started to decline, but we have also seen changes in the VC land and how capital became more expensive, and the investors and the board members started to question cost of acquisition, and it wasn't anymore about growing at all costs, but it was about how do we grow in a sustainable way at a reasonable cost of acquisition, and not just keep showing kind of top of funnel acquisition numbers and putting more and more money into top of funnel, into demand capture, et cetera, et cetera. So we see that big shift, and it's still up to the last calls we have. It's something that we see as a big pattern. So the way that our prospects and our clients are expressing that is, just wanted to share some quotes. The opportunistic stuff. So, outside of their ICP, right? Outside of those high value clients, those ICPs that you can actually share, that you can have a reasonable chance of winning, but also then retaining over a long time. This is what the majority of companies want. They want to focus on such ICPs, such ideal customers. Like this one sales director mentioned, the opportunistic stuff should be 20 to 30%, and basically 80%, 70% should be focused on our ICP. The way that she mentioned this was on the sweet spot accounts that we can close quicker, deliver value quicker, and expand quicker. Hello, Andrei.
Hello, everyone. Good to see everyone again.
So I was sharing the first set of challenges that have to do with kind of acquisition at all costs, going broadly, acquiring any kind of customer. To really a lot of our prospects, a lot of our clients really want to double down on those sustainable customers. So if I win an opportunity, if I generate an opportunity with such an account, I know that I have a more chance to win and retain over a long time. And this has been like a big shift and a challenge. And what we see is that it almost doesn't matter of the size of the company. So we have been speaking to huge enterprise companies. We have been speaking to, maybe 10, 20, 30 million type B2B SaaS companies. But this is something that is definitely a repeated pattern. What is the main reason? I think I already mentioned companies are looking to focus on this ICP because they want to increase their average deal size, win rates, and retention. This is what you see. Like I said, from 20 million to 300 million and above, this is like a focus for a lot of companies. Now, I wanted to share not just the challenges that we are seeing in the shifts, but I also wanted to share kind of the behind the scenes, how we're thinking about this, and also some of the solutions that we have tested. Because this year we have tested some new solutions on how to be more focused on your ICP with cluster-based programs. So maybe that's something that, Andrei, you can explain.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think before we'll touch this part, I saw a question from Erin, which is very relevant to the challenges that you have shared. So I think we can just very quickly touch on it. And the question is, which is more specific to account-based marketing, but I feel it really overlaps with what you have just shared. We have a large ABM priority account list, 700 accounts. I struggle to scale programs with the right level of personalization while also ensuring we have the proper AR coverage for all accounts. How do you suggest teams approach it? And I think it's this is where the problem lies, right? It's by default, all of these accounts, and I don't know, obviously, your target addressable market, but the point is that the question that you need to ask yourself and your team: how many of these accounts know us as the vendor? And you need to come up with a tangible criteria, right? This where marketing and sales are aligned with. What does it mean to call a specific account being vendor aware? That's the first thing, right? And that's the answer to your AR coverage part. Now, the second question is, do we know if this account is in the buying mode? What is their current buyer journey stage? More specifically, what is do we know their need? Do we understand how can we help? How our product can help, right? And lastly, is there anything that tells us that these accounts are that these accounts might be or are likely to buy our product currently? So from the perspective of personalization, you'll never be able to personalize to 700 of accounts. It's just realistically not possible, or you need to have, you need to work for a company like IBM or Microsoft, etc., and have an army of sales reps who can do, one-on-one personalization. So the key point is it's all about segmenting these accounts, but by this level of relationship, product need evidence signals, and likelihood of becoming sales opportunity. And then you create completely separate playbooks. Accounts that don't know you and you don't know their need. What should you do first? You need to create awareness, as simple as that. Whenever they hit your engagement threshold, whenever they hit this awareness criteria, the next step for both marketing and sales would be installing or creating the playbooks to run account research and validate the need of this account, or understand the need, or figure out if there is a need at all, right? And your playbook would be all about this. And lastly, you have accounts which we call active focus. These accounts hit your engagement threshold or awareness threshold. They know you. Then this account, you have a validated need, or you see the product need evidence signals, right? Something tells you that these accounts are likely to have a need in your product. And this is where you work on one-on-one playbook. This is where you leverage the full personalization, right? So from the perspective of marketing and sales, the biggest list would be this cluster ICP accounts that don't know you. And altogether, you can define how you can create awareness there, right? And this, like what Vlad already mentioned, the cluster approach, right? You don't try to come up with one size fits all content or offering, etc., right? You define the cluster, which is typical, your, let's say, bread and butter use case or the typical challenge that your accounts face, and you solve it with your product. And you can run ads, you can do a lot of, let's say, thought leadership, content, newsletters, events, webinars, whatever, right? The point is to make sure that these accounts become aware of you. Then the second group is where you install the like more specific processes, and this could be, if we'll use ABM slang, the let's say one to few playbooks, right? And the third one would be where you work on fully personalized account engagement, right? And but this the last group, active focus accounts, these accounts that are likely to become sales opportunities, and this is why you invest time of your marketing and sales team. If you just try to cover 700 accounts with one-on-one ABM, it's never going to work, simply because of not having these resources. And I doubt that sales reps would be willing to do this. But at the same time, just pretending that you can do, some sort of personalization, it will also never work. So this would be the best advice to this. And that leads us to the next point that Vlad mentioned, the alignment on ICP clusters and prioritization criteria.
Yeah, I think Andrei explained it very well already. And that is a lot of the programs that we ran this year were based on this approach. I think just to wrap up essentially what Andrei explained, and what you can see also for those who are joining us live, what they can see here on the screen is, first of all, you figure out what are the typical, like Andrei mentioned, and the bread and butter use cases, the reasons why customers buy from you. So let's say, we observed that a lot of companies after the merger and acquisitions are doing some unification of their tech stack, and this is one of the triggers. Or we observed that, I don't know, like a lot of PLG companies who want to introduce enterprise sales motion are looking at ABM and ABM solutions as an example. So this would be like very specific use case. Now you take that use case and you try to identify accounts, and that's what we call the cluster. The cluster of accounts is a group of accounts that has that use case. And then which use case, first of all, like which use case do you select? You select those where you had historically the highest sales velocity, the best deal size, win rates, good sales cycle length, right? And then, like Andrei explained, you develop a program for this cluster, right? When you said, like, for example, air cover and personalization, well, if your goal is to create awareness because these accounts are not aware of your brand and what you can do for them, well, then the personalization would be on level of that use case. So you can talk about very specific challenges that these accounts who have that use case experience. And then as we see that these accounts have some sort of awareness of us, they're engaging with a specific type of content, they're engaging with our brand, visiting a website, or visiting our events, or engaging with our content on social media, we can start more focusing on them, like Andrei mentioned, to define the problems that they have, to validate it essentially. Do they have the product need? Do they indeed have that use case? What is the actual need that they have? And then you can start personalizing for those where you have the validated product need, there is awareness, you start doing the one-on-one personalization. And that's what you can see here, these three lists. What you can see under the list, or can't see because it's small, are detailed criteria. So you really want to turn or define very clear criteria and signals so that you can basically classify your accounts or prioritize your accounts, and according to their level of, or where they are in their buyer journey. And then obviously what you want to do, and don't have the time to go into detail, is to also align your activities with with the buyer journey, with where they are in the buyer journey. So like Andre was mentioning, creating awareness with different kinds of activities here with content and content distribution, nurturing and validating the need through multiple touch points here, and doing one-on-one activation playbooks on those that are in the active pipeline list. All right, so this was all about this shift of acquisition, going from kind of acquisition at all costs, anybody who could potentially become a customer, let's go after them, to a very, very focused high-end accounts. Let's look at the next one. The next one that we see here is all about awareness creation. And it's a bit lengthy. It's my fault. I formulated it like that. I wanted to capture maybe too much of this challenge, but there are several things that we see here. A lot of accounts are struggling to, a lot of our clients and prospects are struggling to create awareness in those high value accounts. And also when it comes to awareness, because a lot of companies might be doing well when it comes to product marketing, when it comes to demand capture, very frequently they experience kind of a commodity perception, right? Like they are perceived as commodity vendor. In other words, one of many vendors, and they're looking to shift to a more being perceived as more kind of a strategic partner rather than that kind of commodity vendor. So I don't know if you wanted to share, maybe Andrei, some observations from your experience working with clients and talking with prospects, how these challenges observe, or you want us to jump into the solutions here?
Absolutely. I would summarize everything that everything that everybody could see on the slides in a conversation that I had recently with VP of Sales, which actually happened yesterday in the evening. And we were talking about what led them to launch account-based marketing program, right? What was the main trigger? And he said two things. Look, so the first thing, we tried a lot of different activities in the past. And what is happening to our sales reps? Our outbound emails are not getting any replies. Why? Because they are selling to big financial associations and institutions. So these people, they are very reluctant to reply to the outreach of sales reps. They have no clue who are these people. And the second problem that is associated with this, that they are not the only one vendor that tries to sell their product to the same buyer persona. And I'm not talking only about their competitors. These are all other vendors who are selling to financial vertical. Why? Because it's one of the, let's say, the most lucrative verticals. This is where the money is, right? And everybody is trying to sell to the same CTO, to the same, like whatever buyer persona you might have in mind, right? Everybody already tries to sell to them. And everybody is pitching them, and everybody might be using Clay, ChatGPT to kind of come up with personalized emails, but this doesn't help a lot. Now, the second problem, he says, like they try to send connection requests on LinkedIn to open the conversation, and people simply don't accept the connection requests, right? So, and one of the reasons, one of the conclusion is that these accounts are simply not aware of us. So we have a high success when referrals recommend us, or some of the existing customers, they tell the story and they love then people love our product. They like pre-buy in the entire philosophy and the conversation goes well. But to start from scratch, start with the cold account, it's just really not possible. And this is why we want to do account-based marketing, right? We want to be sure that we are not perceived as just a commodity product that wants to sell, that wants to charge the enterprise price for it, right? That's the first thing. And the second one, we want to make sure that our motion is efficient, that whenever our sales reps are reaching out to these people, then there is a high chance that these people will reply back. And also to give you an idea what's essential, why it's essential, the sales cycle, typical sales cycle is around 12 months. And average contract value varies from 100K to 500K, more or less, annual cost, right? So obviously, from that perspective, you need to have consultative sales approach, right? But if you want to implement it, but your product is considered, just like one more as we have seen on the market, you're not going to solve this challenge, right? So creating awareness among target accounts, as you can guess, is very tied to being perceived as a strategic vendor. So this is in a nutshell the conversations that we have heard this year, right? And account-based marketing in this case is one of the best ways to solve the misalignment between marketing and sales and to proceed to this specific activity. If you'll come back to everything that we have shared, right? And if you'll follow the same philosophy of dividing accounts by the likelihood of creating opportunity and their current status, know us, don't know us, we have relationship, we don't have relationship, we know their need, we don't know their need, right? You can easily adjust your playbooks. And despite of this, if you take the cluster approach, right, you will be always, as one team, you'll be always focused on, first of all, creating awareness among these target accounts, right? And reposition yourself as a strategic vendor tool. I think I would like also to call you, Vlad. I think what would be also important here to share is how to come up with this strategic narrative, right? How even to create a plan and activities that could help you to be associated as a strategic vendor, right? For all of these activities, we need to involve senior leadership. Recently, you have had this engagement with one of the clients, so I think it would be beneficial if you'll just share the outline of this conversation and what is essential to get from senior leadership to be able to implement it.
No, absolutely. I think it's also interesting to mention, like, why is that important? The reason why this is so important to, another reason why this is so important to be perceived as a kind of strategic vendor and to talk about strategic challenges, because if you look at enterprise buyers especially, they are kind of risk averse and they prefer to work with brands that they trust, that they know. And there was actually this year, there was a big study done by Trust Ratings Pavilion. And one of the conclusions was that 86% of enterprise buyers will buy or shortlist at least vendors that they have already known. So vendors that have discovered before starting their buying process. What does it mean? It means that if you want to be in that consideration set, it means that you need to market and communicate to buyers who are not buying, right? So why is that related to the strategic positioning narrative? Because if your buyers are not buying and your product addresses like one specific part of their, like, let's say they're leading the marketing function, for example, they're a CMO, and they have to do various things. And one of the things that their team needs to do, for example, is run these large events. And they might be at a certain moment looking for a tool like Goldcast, which is a tool to run large events, but it's not top of their mind. It is part of their job, right? So if Goldcast would want to be positioned as a strategic partner, they can't just be talking about the best tool for running online events or running massive online events or whatever, the way that they're positioning themselves. They need to be talking about bigger topics, right? Topics that are top of mind of your buyers, even if they're not buying. So coming back to Andrei's prompt, right, about strategic narrative, that's why this is so important, because you need to understand, if you want to be perceived as a strategic partner, the first thing you need to understand is what are those strategic challenges that are on top of your buyer's mind, right? Because usually your product is a piece of the puzzle. It is a solution or a part of the solution of a bigger challenge that is hopefully like top of mind of your buyers and is important enough for them to care, right? So if you want to come up with content and messaging that is going to position you as a strategic channel, the first thing you want to understand, what are those strategic challenges that are top of their mind? This next thing you want to know, you want to understand is how would our buyers like to be perceived? And what I mean by that is, let's say you're selling into HR, and you know that HR is kind of actually very similar to marketing, very frequently not perceived as a strategic function. It's perceived as an order taker. It's perceived as a very operational function. And we know that, for example, HRs and marketers have this desire to be perceived as kind of as a strategic. They have strategic importance within the organizations. They deserve a seat at an executive table, etc., etc. Now that you understand that, to become relevant and to be able to create that awareness, the strategic narrative that will create that awareness at the right level, you also want to understand, okay, what is the best way to talk about it? Should I be talking about just events? Well, probably doesn't make sense if they're not looking to run an event now, if they're not looking for the tool right now. How can I be that one of the, let's say, shortlisted products, even though they're not thinking about it? So you need to be thinking about, okay, if the strategic challenge of my buyers is, let's say, my buyers are, let's say, head of marketing or head of demand, for example, right? So their strategic challenges are, we are discussing them today. So how do we create demand and awareness in those target accounts? So this is one of the strategic challenges that, for example, Goalcast could be, creating content about. But then also, like, the next question you can ask your leadership is, okay, and you can also involve salespeople, is like, what are the things that are happening right now, maybe trends in the industry or changes or shifts in the market that are happening right now that are making kind of the urgency to change, or are, let's say, making the usual practices that to deal with it. So our prospects have always a solution to their challenge. They are doing it in some way. They have a solution in place, right? They are running their events in one way or another, for example. But is there something that is happening right now that is making those practices obsolete? That is making those practices, and in other words, that is creating an urgency to change, right? So, for example, we might say that we do observe a big shift in the way that the buyers are buying and discovering solutions, right? So if you want to create a demand, you need to adapt your marketing to the way that they are discovering solutions. Thought leadership becomes very important because this is how your buyers are discovering solutions today. They are not, looking at the ads or Googling. They're actually discovering by consuming podcasts and content or attending events with thought leaders and other experts that I follow. Okay, so you need to adopt the way that you market to those. So let's say I have a solution exactly for that, and Goalcast is an excellent product. We do use it as well for our thought leadership programs. Now I could start to talk about those things, right? So instead of basically talking about, oh, we have the best features, we have the best product, to buyers who are actually not even looking to the product, they're not comparing us to anybody, we start talking about their strategic challenges. We position our brand as a strategic partner who can help you achieve, can help you be perceived in the way that you want to be. We also link to some of the changes that our buyers are also aware of, the changes that are happening that are driving this urgency to change, right? And this is how you start creating a strategic narrative. You could think of it, I think Andy Raskin talks about the old and the new game. This is how you could be thinking about it. The old game, the obsolete way of doing, let's say, demand generation, and the new way of doing demand generation, right? What is the new game, right? So this is how you can be thinking about it and the questions that you want to answer. And then once you understand that, you can start creating content around these strategic challenges, basically communicating these messages in your market to position yourself as a strategic partner. And I think just to wrap it up as well, another important thing to understand there is also who do your buyers aspire to, who do they follow, who do they respect and trust. And then also, because one way to be perceived as a strategic partner is to be associated with people and brands that your buyers respect, aspire to, and trust, right? Again, so if it is like demand gen leaders, we know like some of the people who are famous in demand generation. So maybe we should also do some collaboration with these people to start associating our brand with those people, because then suddenly we will also create this perception of strategic partner, because the industry or the industry influencers and the industry leaders are talking about us. We are associated with them. All right.
And I actually saw a great comment from Karen that it's great to share with CFOs because they are not willing to invest into brand awareness. And like whenever this happens, we always recommend to do two things, right? First one, you can collect external stats, like this one that you can see, right? That can prove it. But aside from this, we always recommend to debrief your sales team, right? Look at the lost deals. Look at the lost deals and also on the efficiency of prospecting. This is one of the keys, right? And then you can just start the conversation. Hey guys, what's like in ideal world, you need to have the numbers, but not all sales teams are tracking this, right? So you can ask like, what's your average connection request acceptance rate? What's your average positive reply rate? I'm not just saying that when you send outbound message and people say unsubscribe, it's also could be counted as a reply rate, but it's not something that we want to hear, right? So what's your positive reply rate to your outbound emails, right? How many of opportunities are you booking through your prospecting activities? Collect the initial input. And then the second question, why do you think we have low numbers? Why we are struggling? Why we are not hearing back from these accounts? Why don't we have more replies, right? And also the deals that were lost, you can go through the analysis. Whenever you hear that you lost to the competitor and there is no like there is no huge differentiation between what competitor suggested to that company, right? So it means that they just won on the brand level. What were the struggles? Why the sales cycle was so long? You can hear a lot, and you need to pick it up and come and present, right, to your CFO or to senior leadership. In most cases, you'll hear that whenever they will be replying back to you, they will be hearing we are losing the competitor because they like this company is more established or is better known than our product. And whenever you'll start talking about the efficiency of prospecting, outbound, etc., they would say that it's probably because these people don't know us, right? And these are the perfect arguments. It's just like if we'll formulate a statement for CFO, if this won't be changed, we'll deal with lower response rates, with like with less deals generated through outbound activities. And you know what it also means? It means that the unit economics will become worse, right? So it means that the sales resources become too expensive, and it's likely to lead to the round of layoffs. Unfortunately, it's just the reality, right? And maybe salespeople, they don't think that way, and I mean, not usually teams are not thinking that way, but it's good to communicate between each other, saying, hey guys, look, this is the reality, and if you're not going to communicate it well and present as, and this is also a perfect opportunity to come up as one unit, as sales and marketing as one unit, and present it to sales leadership. Hey guys, if we are not going to change it, we'll have a trouble, right? And we really believe that this is the way. Obviously, then you need to have a good playbook. You can't come and say, hey, let's create awareness, right? You need to explain how you're going to do it, but that's another story. So I just wanted to drop 5 cents on it.
Yeah, and I think also, like, if you're talking to a CFO, you're talking about unit economics. The one part of the economics is the cost, like the Andrei was mentioning. The other part of it is the output or the result. So if you want to create customers that are going to spend most money with you and stay longer with you, it's usually we are talking about larger, typically upper mid-market or enterprise customers. You will need to earn that awareness, position yourself not as a commodity vendor, right? This is another piece of the puzzle, I think, that is important. Studying those best deals, seeing how they are created, how did they hear about you, and then essentially explaining that usually these deals are created through previous awareness. So we need to do more of that. I think it's also interesting to answer one question, although it's not really necessarily about awareness, but I wanted to answer this question from Carlos. What is the best approach when it comes to creating personal assets in ABM campaigns without risking a target audience calling you out for it? And I think I wanted to also link this to awareness, because when we speak about awareness, we don't often speak about personalized ABM, right? I wanted to quickly answer the question. So create personalized assets without risking to create something that is actually not relevant for them is by validating your insights. So when we were explaining this approach where you go from accounts who don't know you and you don't know them to accounts who might have heard about you, but you're not really sure what their needs are, all the way to accounts where you have actually validated the product need. This is exactly what we were talking about. You want to understand what, let's say, imagine you come to your salesperson, sales colleague, and you ask them, if you had to bet your compensation on a deal, on an account, what would you like to know about them? Like, what kind of information would you need to know so that you can create a personalized, 100% personalized, perfect proposal that you know they cannot say no to, right? What are those insights that you need to have? So your goal is to answer these questions about those accounts, like maybe what their priorities and challenges are, what are they're using currently, etc., through account research, but also through number of touch points in conversations that your salespeople have with those target accounts, through maybe, polls during the webinars or sign up forms. Maybe they share some of the information, etc. And then once you know this information is actually validated, then you can use to create those personalized assets. What are the best assets? We found essentially, we call this personalized solution, which is basically explaining how your product solves the challenges you know they have. So the challenges that you have validated and know they have. It can be a simple one-pager sharing exactly how you can help solve their challenges. And then if you have enough information, also and that's usually something that you collect later in conversation, adding some sort of a business case, kind of a before and after, showing them how you can improve not only solve the challenges, but how that would result, how that would translate into business impact is usually the best kind of asset. Now, why do I mention this while we're talking about awareness creation? I think that's also important because usually in the first steps of awareness creation, you are capturing the attention of your champions, right? And then champions need to sell your solution internally. To be able to sell your solution internally, you will also need to create awareness in the rest of the buying committee. And the way to do that is to work together with the champion to then create personalized assets that are called buyer enablement for that account that will help that champion actually communicate, why did we essentially communicate that we have discovered a challenge that is preventing us from achieving a high priority business objective, that the cost of inaction is high enough for us to care, that this is something that we cannot solve internally, and that if we use solution like yours or your solution, we can expect such and such return by that time, and kind of the before and after business case. That will be a great example of a personalized asset. All right. Yeah. Let's go
move to the next one.
This one, I think I would like, if you don't mind, Andrei, to address this together with the alignment, because I don't think you can really make this shift without also having a cross-functional aligned team to actually do to properly influence the buyers and the buyer journey. That a lot of our prospects and clients realize that a lot of the marketing programs, and I think there was a very nice quote. They said, we run one-off campaigns, random acts of marketing, right? That's what I meant by transactional, right here. When I said shifting from transactional isolated activities or random acts of marketing, one-off campaigns, to basically an evergreen process where you're influencing complex B2B buyer journeys with multiple buyers and long sales cycles. So can you share some of the observations that you see, Andrei, in the market, and we can maybe dive into some solutions here. But I would, like I said, a very, very important part of the solution will be also the alignment. So I'd like to address that at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. If we'll come back to the question that Aaron asked in the beginning, right? We have a large list of these accounts, like 700 accounts that are prioritized by sales. I think here is the real problem, right? So all of these accounts might belong to different verticals. All of these accounts might have completely different needs and challenges, right? And all of these accounts might be on different stages of the buyer journey. We often say that the fact that sales prioritized the list doesn't mean that these accounts are going to buy from you now, right? Despite even if you'll create the best possible one-on-one playbook with personalized offer, it might not help at all. Now, what's happening usually with companies that still would try to find a universal solution to engage with these companies, right? As I said, they all might have different needs. They all might be from different verticals. They might belong to different clusters, basically having different use cases or challenges. What happens next? You need to come up with a universal plan, right? Or something that we call one size fits all. Then you don't have a lot of, let's say, opportunities to come up with the real personalization. You'll come up with some generic content. As simple as that. And you need, in most cases, you have limited resources, but you are challenged to engage these 700 accounts. What can you do realistically, right? You can run ads, you maybe can create some generic content, and in the best case scenario, host a generic field event or a webinar. As simple as that. Generic, I mean that it would be like you try to create something that is universal and is appealing to everybody. The reality is that in most cases it won't be. It will be just inefficient, right? And it won't drive and it won't move the needle. And what is going to happen next, right? You'll just be challenged, because sometimes some people, like let's say senior leadership, will be challenging you to do something about this, and you are likely to have this, let's say, random acts of marketing, right? So somebody will say, yeah, so this doesn't work, let's try whatever, let's host the webinar. You do it without any playbook in place and without any proper segmentation. We know this from practice. I'm not saying, obviously, I'm not referring to anybody who is listening to us live, but we have seen this multiple times with clients. They try to do it, maybe a couple of times. They in the best case scenario, they get like 5, 7, 10 maybe show ups. I'm not saying the sign ups, but show ups on that webinar. It's a huge frustration for everybody. No pipeline, no opportunities. People question it. When you do it in a systematic way, if you shift to the approach that we shared with the same client a year after they did the last webinar, and despite all of the skepticism from the sales leaders, we got 140 plus signups. Around it, the show up rate was 66%. It's beaten a FullFunnel 2 times. So our normal show up rate is like 35%. They had almost 66, it was 65 something % show up rate. Fantastic engagement. And obviously, it's not the one-time activity, because there were like a lot of cluster activities happened beforehand, and that transitioned into 6 opportunities with accounts that were in the initial cluster, right? So that's the key. But a lot of companies, they don't stick to that process. They do exactly what they did in the past. They just, let's do the webinar. No strategy in place, no alignment between marketing and sales, no playbooks, it fails, right? And it happens with almost everything. Let's create a market research. Let's create gated content. Let's start nurturing. Let's do something. Let's go to that trade show. Let's go and sponsor the conference. But if there is no strategy in place, and if this strategy is not aligned with the buyer journey, it's not likely to generate any results, right? So the key point where we are heading with this, Vlad mentioned a couple of times, and I think this is one of the most important things. You need to have a not only clear understanding of ideal customer profile, and that ICP will be always adjusted to the ABM program, or to, like, demand generation, doesn't really matter, to the cluster program that you are focusing on this quarter. That's the first thing. And the second one, you always need to run deal analysis to understand how your customers are buying and what influences it. This would be the keys. Aside from this, we always recommend to talk to your subject matter experts. And the ideal candidate for that interview would be a person who used to work as your buyer persona in the past. A person who understands from the first hand what are the jobs to be done, what are the daily challenges, what are the potential strategic initiatives, what are the conversations that are happening in these accounts, what might be a blocker, right? Why these people might not engage with you, or might not be able to sell your product internally. So a lot of these things. And also, we always recommend to ask a couple of questions. When you were in the shoes of our target buyer persona, what content did you consume specifically, right? Quite often you'll hear about specific jobs to be done. Where did you do it? You can listen, you can hear about some maybe conferences, webinars, right? People that are sharing this content, communities, etc. And these are the insights that you need to incorporate into your strategy. These are the channels, these are the activities that you need to incorporate. Because if you'll come up directly and you'll ask a very straightforward question, hey, like, what's the best way to target these people? Just come up with something personalized to them. But this is what you already tried to do, right? But it doesn't work. But if you start this interview from another angle, and you'll start to dig deeper and understand this, right? They might share with you a lot of insights that are hidden, and they are not thinking about these insights, right? But you need to incorporate them. And then this holistic buyer journey, right? One of the things that also coming back to the webinar story that I just shared, just a good anecdote. Before before installing a proper playbook in place, right? Everybody was frustrated with this, but then the playbook worked, and suddenly it raised the expectations of key stakeholders. Oh, wow, so we're going to see like a million pipeline out of it. But unfortunately, webinar itself or any other activity, like even this live podcast, we don't expect that you guys immediately will come to our website and just one by one book discovery calls with us, right? It's not the key point of this activity, but could it influence somehow, let's say, your decision in future? Absolutely yes. Maybe not at this moment, you don't have current need, budget, whatever, doesn't really matter, or you are not in the proper position, right? Or maybe you'll hear from some of your colleagues who are facing with the challenges that we face at company, and you could mention our company, right? This is the goal of this activity that we are doing, right? We are building this community, we create awareness, we generate demand through that way. And this is the same philosophy that you need to explain, that every activity, it influences the buyer journey, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it push people to buy your product, which means that from this activity, if we look from the buyer journey perspective, and we'll look at this account prioritization that Vlad spoke about, right? Some of accounts, they would be more engaged. They would be asking questions. Like, for example, you asked great questions today in the chat, right? I'm not saying that this is the buying intent, but from the buyer journey perspective, right? What the teams could do. They could follow up and talk more about this. Hey, you mentioned this specific challenge, right? And we share it, or let's say our SME shared this solution. We have additional resources. Would you like me to share, right? Now it could be, is it something that you are challenging right now? Would you be up, for example, if we'll pick up Aaron's question about these 700 accounts, right? Would you be would it be helpful if I will suggest, let's say, if I'm reaching out, if I will suggest a 30 minutes call with Vlad to review your ABM strategy and come up with ideas how to refine it, right? Just sharing with you. And if you'll ask why we are not doing this, because we're dealing with completely different problem of balance and the demand that we currently have. But I'm just sharing the ideas that's how that might work from the vendor's perspective, right? So you're not pushing, but you are suggesting the next logical step that could influence that buying process. And you can't do it if you don't involve sales and if you don't involve subject matter experts into that process, because SME would provide you critical feedback. Is it a good action? Is it a good, let's say, next step offer, if it's a good call to action or no, right? And altogether, you need holistically think about, okay, how we create, and if you want to do webinars or field events, how can we attract attention to people so they would even consider that webinar, right? How can we make it that engaged so they would be willing to share more information, come up with questions, etc.? How can we install the next engagement with these accounts if they are not ready to buy our product for multiple reasons, right? There could be multiple reasons why they are not booking demo. So what would be this logical next steps, right? This is the key, and this is what you need to create as a team.
I think this is a great wrap up, because I'm looking through the different challenges that the companies are sharing with us, and I see the challenge is that you need to educate first the stakeholders and find the right moment in time. Global organizations don't challenge every year their approach, processes, and tools. It takes time, and you need to find the right moment. So they're not buying all the time. You cannot expect them just because they have joined, for example, a webinar, or they have engaged with your content that they're ready to buy. But you need to align your activity, your next step, with the level of buyer intent. So this is what I think one way to look at what Andrei was explaining. If they have shared a challenge with you, you can offer them a solution. Maybe you can link them to your internal expert who can help them with that challenge, right? But if they didn't, that doesn't mean that they're looking to buy from you just yet. And I think it's really important. What another set of challenges that we see is a lot of companies say things like, we are aligned on paper, but in practice, sales and marketing never do stuff together. You will never be able to influence the complete buyer journey of the multiple buyers if you don't have that collaboration, if you don't implement the complete playbook, as Andrei was explaining on the example of the webinar. And finally, also, I think very important is to align the internal expectations, because what I heard from Andrei is what I see also very frequently is, even when you implement it fine, don't expect miracles. This is just one of the touch points that you're introducing in the buyer journey. Always expect that the majority of the buyers, even if they're engaging multiple times, are not going to convert at this time. So I think also very important to align those expectations.
I think we can wrap it up as it's the final episode this year, and then we'll take the Christmas pause and come back in January. So let's pick up that last question from Bigum, if I pronounce the name correctly. And it's all about that personalization, right? We're actually doing this, but can sometimes really challenging to know them better than they know themselves. And personalization in digital can be quite risky at times. Do you think it makes sense to use account names in PPC content, for instance? And I would say that here is the tricky part. So first of all, if you target big enterprises, so companies 10K plus employees, honestly, you can use their name, but it's likely that nobody will care until you are known on the, let's say, until you are associated with the enterprise organizations. Then it's not going to help. It's just like, if you will, it's like trying to, if you are small field mice and you try to to reach out to elephants. It's the real example. So the second problem is that a lot of people, they as I'm saying, especially if you want to sell to like mid-sized to enterprise organizations, keep in mind how many vendors try to reach out to this buyer persona, and all of them use some level of personalization, account names. And nowadays, I mean, everybody is smart. People use tools like Clay, come up, hey, here is the buyer persona, or let's say they ask AI, pretend that you are like CTO or VP of IT of a company from, let's say, I don't know, FMCG sector, and I am selling this product. Tell me like what's your need, and come up with personalized email, right? So I mean, the level of what we are observing today, and I think this would be a huge trend for 2025. The barrier for like this fake, but I will tell you in a second why I call it fake personalization. The barrier to create the fake personalization is really low. Everybody could do it, and almost everybody is doing this. The problem, though, what it creates, that these people start ignoring even more all the emails, all the outreach, the messages, etc. So if you are not known as a vendor, and I remember it was so vividly explained by a CTO. Remember, Vlad, when you spoke to that guy from software development company, we invited, he was an SME because we were selling to, this company is selling exactly to CTOs. And he said, look, guys, it's like you can come up with the like super personalized email. You can find all the information about my department's challenges. Like whatever, imagine if I will share it with you and just give you a list of all of my challenges, and you can come up with personalized offer. The truth is that I'm receiving like 50 to like 60 emails every like week that people try to pitch me and sell something. I just simply don't have time to read all of them, even to open them. So today, for me to read your email or to LinkedIn message, I need to know you, because I just simply don't have time to look at all of this on the volume of all of these emails. And that's the reality. That's the answer to your question. So coming back to everything that we have shared today, if you don't, if your target accounts, if your ICP accounts are not perceiving you as a strategic vendor, or as a vendor that is associated with their strategic challenges, these personalization tactics, they won't help. It's like trying to put a band-aid on a bleeding neck, right? More or less, that would be my best reply. So think about how to solve the root reasons, and the tactics, they will come later. So hope that reply helps. And that being said, thank you. I'm so happy to see also in the comments that you guys enjoyed this episode. And for us, it's always a pleasure to see our community coming and asking all these fantastic questions, because these questions help us to come up with the content that is relevant to you. Just not talking about the generic things, all things B2B marketing. That being said, we wish you a fantastic rest of the year, crushing your numbers, hitting your targets, and seeing you guys next year. Take care. Cheers.
Bye. Have great holidays.